James Thomas, Morning Blend. I'm here today with newly appointed COO of St. Louis Community College. He's been there for a while, but this is a new position for him, Hart Nelson. Good afternoon, Hart. How are you?
Good afternoon, James. I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. So let's just dive right into it. What are your duties as COO? And this is the first time the college has had a COO. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. I guess I will say in my time here, certainly, and I think as long as the chancellor's been here, there may have been a role similar to mine in the past. I'm sure they probably had to have someone doing the things that I'm doing when they were building the place, since there were a lot going on back then with the campuses. But yeah, no, it's a new role. So my duties, I guess I'll say primarily, the biggest thing that I'm looking at is our STLCC Transformed project, which I think we're going to talk about here in a bit, which is a pretty ambitious project to use the funding that the community provided us through Proposition R and really modernize and transform our campuses for the next 60 years. We just hit our 60-year anniversary, and some of our buildings are showing their age. And so, we like to make sure that our students are really having a modern educational experience. So I've got that. That is obviously the big part of what I do. Also, our IT department falls under my department. Our facilities, so the folks where we're going to be doing a lot of new construction and new buildings, but we also have to maintain the existing buildings and make sure they're up to the quality that we expect. And of course, have to maintain these new buildings. Our workforce component, and that was something that I led previously at the college, was our Workforce Solutions Group. That's also under the COO. And finally, we have also a relatively new department. It's just kind of changed a bit, which is our Operations and Quality Group. And so those are the folks that really focus on how do we improve internally. I like to put it as, we're an accredited institution. And so we have the Higher Learning Commission that goes and spends a lot of time reviewing our academics and taking a look at our curriculum and the programs we have, making sure that they're high quality so that we can be an accredited institution. But we also have to take a look at that on the parts that aren't part of the academics, just in terms of our processes and our operations. And that's what this department is going to do, is really help us modernize and improve internally.
So we're talking a little bit about the transformation into all of this, correct? Mm-hmm. Definitely.
That's exactly it. And basically, transforming, you can't just transform and add new buildings without also taking a look at how are we going to do this? How are we going to operate? The example of that is a lot of our programming, and we've done this already, is expanding our healthcare programming. So you're well aware we have a new building at Forest Park that went up a couple of years ago, our Center for Nursing and Health Science. It's been a phenomenal building and really has increased our enrollment there. I love seeing it full. Students never leave. They go there, and they're tough programs to be a nurse and to do some of these other healthcare programs. But also seeing how do we support those students in different ways? How are we able to expand that same programming to every one of our campuses? And so we've done that. And then now we're kind of, I guess I would say, building out to support the programming we already have there. So in this case, it's a transformation where the classes and the programs are already on our campuses. And now we're putting together some purpose-built space, classrooms, and simulation labs just to support them. And so
not only are you talking about supporting the students, but there is a huge gap in healthcare workers in the metropolitan area. So you're actually filling two gaps, students and for the city of St. Louis. Talk a little bit about that.
So I think that's a really good point. The last thing that I think that we want to do, and it's certainly not what we went and talked to the voters about with Proposition R, we don't want to train people and not have them have something at the end of that education and training where they're going to be able to get a job. And I don't just want to talk about a job, or I don't like the term a living wage job. That's really where we're underselling our students, and we're underselling what we want them to do. We want to get them into a good job. Healthcare is a great example of that. A fabulous opportunity in terms of where the wages are. So for an example, I believe a registered nurse right now is making around $60,000 to $65,000 a year. There's 2,500 open positions in our region for nurses alone, not to mention some of the other categories of healthcare. So what I'm saying is a lot of demand that even with the expansions that I just talked about, the new buildings we're going to be putting up, we're not going to be able to meet that for years. But it is an opportunity for a young person or someone looking to do something different. They just, hey, I want a career change. It isn't for everyone. I'll be very clear that Healthcare is not for me. That's why I do what I do and not healthcare. But it is something for a whole lot of people. And I see the students graduating. I see the new students coming in. We used to have a wait list, and now with our expansion, we've been able to make, so that folks don't have to wait a year or 2 years before they can get in the door and get on their pathway towards a career in healthcare. So yeah, I mean, the opportunities are there. And then when you take a look at the salary levels and the wages that they'll be earning, that's really the goal. We don't want to just have someone, walk out of a classroom or even across the stage with their degree. That's great. We're a college. We like to see that. But what we really want to see for our measure of success is they walk across that stage, they get that degree. Oh, and then next week they're starting their new job and they're going to be getting a new paycheck, all the benefits, and working for some really great employers in our region. So that's what we're looking to do.
Thinking of that mix, let's talk now about the initiative of the St. Louis Community College.
Sure. So STLCC transformed, again, it came out of the Proposition R that we put in front of the voters, which was a tax levy increase, basically increasing the tax revenue that the community provides us. And what our commitment to everyone, to the community is we're going to use that money to modernize and expand our workforce programs. And so it was primarily around, just as we talked about, healthcare, but also taking a look at technology, so IT, biotech, advanced manufacturing, and some other categories there. Areas where, just as you were describing, there's a lot of demand. So, I mean, there's tons of job openings right now in advanced manufacturing, IT, for coders, for web developers. The companies in the area just can't get enough folks who have those skill sets. And so that's where we're going to be focusing our projects. What we're going to be doing are 2 buildings at every one of our campuses. So, for example, out in Wildwood, West County, we only have 1 building right now. It's outgrown it. And so, they're getting a whole lot of new space, but this is very purpose-built space. We're not just building kind of the general classrooms, because what we've discovered, and what a lot of folks know, and our students certainly, is modern education is about these simulation spaces. So when you take a look at a healthcare building, and that's one of the buildings we're putting out in Wildwood, it's going to have rooms that look very much like a hospital setting, because that's where they're going to be working. Or it looks like radiology, where they're doing x-rays, because that's what we're training them to do. And so it has to be familiar to them, so that when they get to the hospital or when they get to the doctor's office, our students from day one are kind of familiar with, hey, what is this going to look like? What are the other folks that I'm going to be interacting with? And just have the familiarity with the equipment. That just isn't in the healthcare space either. When you take a look at biotechnology, for example, it's using the exact same equipment in the lab, or in our classrooms and in our labs where we have for learning, that they're going to be using on the job. They have some cool names. One's called the gene gun. I always thought that'd be something out of like a Bugs Bunny cartoon where you can zap someone and they turn. That's not what it is. It's a lot less interesting than that. But it's pretty cool what they're able to do, and they're able to do that in a learning environment. So again, 2 buildings. We have 2 at Wildwood. Up at Florissant Valley, I'm really excited about those. We're doing a healthcare building. It's going to be very, very similar to the one that we have at Forest Park, but we learned a few things. And so really with that, it's going to be very similar programming with a couple of tweaks. But we're also doing an advanced manufacturing center there at Florissant Valley, where we're going to bring in kind of a couple of different programs that we have in different spaces, and we're going to put them in this one purpose-built building now. I'm excited about that because I mentioned I was the workforce guy before. That means all the non-credit programs. So these really accelerated training programs that don't take a year or 2 years to do. Some of these are just a few weeks in many cases. And so the first time we're actually going to have our credit and non-credit programs in the same space. And the idea there is you may come in our door to do a non-credit program because, like I've got 5 weeks that I can give to this and I need a job. And so it's all right, we're going to get you through that program, but you're going to be there with students who are looking at a 2-year degree in advanced manufacturing, precision machining, or they're doing something that is going to give them a different credential. We hope that those interactions kind of spur, hey, maybe I'll come back and continue my education after I've got this job, after I'm earning money, and when I get to a point in my life when I'm ready to do that. So we want to make sure we have those opportunities. So that's advanced manufacturing. At Forest Park, we're doing 2 more buildings as well. We're doing a transportation and logistics center. So that'll be for our auto tech, our diesel program, truck driving will be there. And we are hoping to build out a new logistics program. And then also our hospitality and culinary. That's something. St. Louis has a really good food scene and really has expanded over the last couple of decades and really grown to get national attention. And our culinary program is excellent. It is absolutely world class. And so having, again, a purpose-built space for them to do that kind of education. We're really excited about. And then finally, Merrimack is a campus where we're kind of knocking out the whole front entrance of it. And again, it's showing its age. We've got some buildings that really, they're just not very flexible anymore. And so we're taking down 4 buildings, and we're going to put up 2 larger buildings that are modern, that have the ability to kind of be flexible in their layout and in how the classes are designed. Simple things like back in the 60s when the buildings were built, the chairs were bolted to the floor. They were in a format, you couldn't move them around. And sometimes they were that kind of like stadium seating. That's just not what, especially in times of COVID, or when you want students to be able to cluster into working groups and then to separate again for individual learning, or the fact that everyone needs a phone charger or a laptop charger right now. That's just not how these rooms were built. And so we're having these modern learning environments with a lot of that technology, the cameras and the displays and things like that, that really is going to allow us to be a good opportunity for folks to learn for the next 20, 30 years.
We've been talking today with Hart Nelson, newly appointed COO, but he's been there for a while. It's a new position for him. Talking about St. Louis Community College, their 60 years, their new initiative, and of course, their mission. Thank you again for joining us on Morning Blend.
Thanks, James.